edition of Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn, and this is our response and discussion panel to session um, uh, 2 of identifying the elephant in the room. Critical communication strategies in the face of sexism. We've just heard from leaders in the natural products industry, and the goal of our after the elephant session is to process this information and respond to it in a discussion format with some thought leaders in the industry, and then challenge other leaders in the industry to do some deep work to make meaningful and fundamental changes. I have a shout out to Mary in Florida, who's been very kind in following us the last week, and hopefully this week, so that we can. It's just nice to hear nice things about what we're doing, and we thank Amy Summers for bringing us all together. Let me introduce everybody. We'll start with Elan Sudberg, and Elan is the CEO of Alkemist Labs, based in Orange County, California. Correct?
Correct. Happy to be here.
All right.
Thank you.
And then we also have Salma Fathalla. I hope I get that right. Senior Director of Quality and Regulatory at Bonafide Health. There you go. And we have Gabriel, Paulino, Chief Product Officer and co-founder of renegade.bio. You all watched the last session, and I have written some notes. When I heard Carrie Marshall talk about sexual assault, my heart stopped as a man. I don't understand that. No means no. I'm going to start with you, Elan. How did that make you feel when you heard that?
I'm disgusted, disappointed, disgusted. Hearing all the panelists talk about their stories and how they could have gone on for another 4 or 5 hours to share their little stories about their experiences was really disappointing. I'm aware that these things happen, but not to the extent. And if we don't talk about it, we would never know. So to answer your question, disgusted, really.
And Gabriel, how about you?
I was shocked. As Elan mentioned, look, you kind of see like very inappropriate behavior sometimes at shows or networking events, but never realize that there are so many real examples every day. And what was really shocking to me is like, gosh, women like not only have to fear men, but now they also have to fear like this queen bee. So it's like they live in fear pretty much every day. It's like, how can you even function when you live in fear? And seeing the impact that it has on their like physical aspect. When Carrie and Sandra were mentioning that, like, they would have a rash just from being in this very uncomfortable situation, and that's shocking that they feel unsafe pretty much every day.
Yeah, it is shocking. Salma, how about you? I mean, you're the only woman on our panel. Enlighten us.
Yeah.
Does this happen a lot?
Yeah, Mark, I actually was not very surprised. I mean, it is disgusting behavior. It's not okay, but I was really not surprised. It does happen pretty often.
This whole series of Elephant in the Room, how has it impacted each of you? And I'll start with you, Salma, this first time.
Sure. So I'm actually very happy to see something like this come about and come together. I've kind of been waiting for years for something like this. So that's how I feel about that. It's about that time that we have this conversation, and not just in a group of women, but also involving male figures, and also people from all levels of leadership.
Elan, your thoughts?
Yes, similar. I think it's time we've had this conversation. I'm a bit of a disruptor myself, so I appreciate when things, cause ripples down the the industry of the world. But I'm hoping that this obviously raises awareness and causes some change. Even to hearing the Salma say that she's not surprised, I mean, it shows how ignorant I might be, not realizing all these things are happening. Obviously, people aren't talking about enough to share it at, so that I understood how prevalent it is. But yeah, I think it's great that we're talking about it, and we should continue to talk about it for sure.
And Gabriel.
Well, I'm really glad that Amy has put this series together. As Salma mentioned, it's been such a long time where we know these things happen, and it's always like this big taboo, and all the way to this hush money on harassment, and then that people that arrest other people can just be hired at the top level in other organizations very easily without like any consequences. Is just it's very disappointing for our industry. I really hope this series transform our behaviors, everybody's behaviors, because it's not only about women on one side and people of color on one side. It's all of this together. But I don't want it either to be us versus them, because that's what we tend to do. Is we always need to find an enemy. No, it's we all need to come together and really have those honest conversations and really remove the bad behaviors from this industry so everybody can feel safe. How can you do your job and be at your best?
And it would seem to me that this is more of a people issue, not a man versus woman or woman versus man, or as the panel even said, woman versus woman. It's a people issue.
If I can, I would agree with that, but I would think it's definitely a people issue because it does go both ways, but it obviously not to the extent. I mean, as Jim mentioned, he had his own share of harassment in his days, and I have had my own share as well. But it's not to the extent that, at least my guess is probably not the extent that men to women or men against women.
Gabriel, you're a member of the you're a co-founder. I found that out in Amy's pre-interview with you of the Naturally Proud Network. Have you experienced some form of sexual discrimination because of your
sexual
choices?
orientation?
Yeah.
I haven't really faced it as how do you say that, as brutally as a woman with experience or this type of sexual harassment. What I've definitely seen in my past in some companies, very concrete example, just joining a company and signing up for your health insurance, and literally being written on your health insurance that, if you are, if you have a partner of the same sex, you basically cannot sign up for your health insurance. So, and you cannot have your partner of the same sex on your health insurance. So that's, joining a company that basically tells you if you are who you are, we're not going to provide you the same service that we provide to every other straight people. So that was actually pretty shocking joining this company. Well, thank God this thing, there's been laws passing since then, and that is not an issue. But we're seeing laws being reversed in some states for other type of field, a trans healthcare.
We have a couple of comments coming in from Sandra Lee, who says, "Hi, Mark, Elan, Gabe, and Salma." And Sandy Almendares says, "Excited to hear this conversation. Thanks for stepping up." And we have others. Petra say thank you, and Pitch Publicity as well. That it was their comment was it was shocking that Carrie would talk about that. I was watching a movie the other night, and it was a movie about the early. It was a romantic comedy because I don't watch horror movies, and my wife and I were watching this movie from 1937, and it was absolutely so sexist. And I'll even tell you the name of the movie. It was The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. It's a great film. It really is. The acting is super. Salma, have you seen it?
No, but
No.
I'm
Okay.
interested now.
Okay, you have to watch it. Rex Harrison's the male lead. And he was a sea captain and talking down to the woman he was actually haunting, but she wouldn't take it. She stood up to him. Can women do that today in the 21st century? Can they stand up to a boss or a coworker who's just being inappropriate, saying, hugging, for example, without asking permission?
They they can and they should, but they run the risk of being pegged as we saw, like queen bee or other words, or and a lot of men aren't comfortable or used to assertive or aggressive women, which I think is welcome these days, or becoming more welcome. So it's a slow process for change, unfortunately. But yeah, but I'm not. That's from my perspective. That in my organization, I would hope that people would speak up for those types of things. But I also recognize that it's probably very, very difficult for some to do that. You can't just, as some of the panelists said before, find a new job. It's not as easy as those words come out of my mouth.
Yeah, and I wrote that down too. Get another job. You know,
Yeah,
and if you're a woman over 50, if you're a man over 50, it's really hard to get a job, right?
yeah.
What about that hugging? Is it appropriate? Jim Lavelle, who's a good friend, was talking about women squeezing his bicep
Yeah.
without permission. That's inappropriate, isn't it? Selma?
Yeah, I mean, Mark, that's definitely inappropriate. I do want to make note, though, of what Jim said about setting expectations. So sometimes I I see people similar to the stories that Carrie shared. I see people from previous jobs where that expectation may not have been set because maybe either it didn't need to or whatever the case was. Now you're in a new position and maybe they feel like they can do that. They no longer work with you and they can do that. But I do firmly believe in setting expectations where you do go. So if you did change jobs, for example, for me, my previous position, I didn't set much expectations, but now there's firm expectations that are set, and I never have to worry about anything like that happening. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Can I comment on the hugging?
Yeah,
Because
and
I'm a hugger, and I the times have changed, and I do recognize that I'm a hugger, and I have to be careful because some people are not hugger. Throughout the pandemic, obviously everything changed around hugging, but these days I say, hey, are you accepting hugs? And to date, no one said no, except for one person, and I think it was because of COVID. But now I wonder, retrospectively, would they be comfortable saying no? So I think we got to be careful. Hugging is amazing, especially
yeah,
when you're seeing old friends. And I'm friendly with old employees. Carrie's old story was terrifying. Thinking about that, so
Well,
I'm
hang on. Yeah, hang on.
good.
I do have something to say on that for you. So, I mean, her story was that this individual came and hugged her directly, nobody else. So
Yeah,
that's a different scenario than if you're a hugger. I'm a hugger
yeah,
too. In certain scenarios, that's fine.
yeah,
You're gonna hug everybody. You're gonna say hello. But when you
right,
ostracize one person and it kind of feels a little creepy,
right,
if I
yeah,
should say, yeah, that's
yeah.
different.
I guess my point is that just from this, hour and 14 minutes I spent on this topic, I'm rethinking my personal policy of hugging. Because what if someone's not comfortable saying no to a hug, and suddenly I'm, now we're embracing, and that's an uncomfortable situation for them, and then in the future for me, of course. So thanks to Pitch Publicity for putting this on. I've already learned something really good.
right. And Gabriel, how about you? What's your take on that?
I mean, I have to agree with Elan. I'm also a hugger, but that's a new thing because before moving to the US, I was definitely not. That's very strange behavior. Moving into this country and like people hugging, it's like very, like it's really like entering someone's private space, right? Not that French with their kiss is even better, but that's the same thing in France. Like a lot of like men would go straight to like kiss women on the cheeks, and in a professional setting, is like, is that appropriate? um and but I agree, it's like now I'm thinking like, oh, who do I hug? It's like, yeah, I should probably ask before I hug. But usually I would hug, obviously, close friends in the industry. I was shocked to hear, like, oh, this first interaction and up we go, we hug.
Yeah.
That's so awkward.
There are companies that deny that there's any sexism issues, and that's hard to believe. I think after studying and researching this with Amy the last couple of weeks as we prepared, do you think that that's possible for a company to be either so totally unaware that there is sexism happening in their company, or they're so on top of it that they've put their thumb down?
Entirely.
Elan?
I mean, my personal experience, I've only really worked for my own company for 27 years, and we have 43 people. But yeah, it is entirely possible that you could be unaware from the top down, or like you said, put your thumb on it. It really, sometimes it comes from the top. And if the top is the exec team or whoever makes it up is, known for acting inappropriately, it's going to be rampant throughout the company.
And
Yeah.
Salma, how about you?
I don't think that a company would definitely not just completely be oblivious to it. I think that might be a stance that they're taking, or some lack of some piece in their HR, or just that piece is missing. But or they're protecting the company, so they'd rather out of sight, out of mind, and not deal with it. That's what I think on that.
Suzanne Shelton says something that I think is really interesting. She says it's so telling that the three of us are shocked that women deal with assault and harassment or the fear of it all the time. So this demonstrates that we should never stop pointing it out. And I have to agree with Suzanne. It's not so much that I was shocked. It's just anytime I hear this, it's shocking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
What shocked me also is that we, like, it sounds like we can't even trust the HR departments in our own companies, because they will automatically, protect the company. And if from the top leadership, those behaviors are absolutely acceptable, and then they can just jump from one company to the other and hold HR like under their basically umbrella to protect themselves. That is it's almost an organizational structure. It's like, does HR should report directly to CEO, or be this like independent that is there to protect their employees and the company as well, because nobody wants to have a story about their company and sexual harassment. It's like, that's
Right.
not good publicity. So it really starts at the leadership level. If those behaviors are happening in the boardroom, it's hard to not expect the same thing to happen down in the company.
Selma?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it should get to the public. It shouldn't be a publicized thing if it's talked about constantly, and your employees feel safe enough to bring it up when it happens, and you take action when it happens. Then I feel like it would go into a negative light in the public if it is kind of stifled. So I think the more that you talk about it, and the more that you not necessarily talk about it, but the more that the tools are there for your employees to be able to bring it up, and the action is there behind whatever they say, then you should be in good shape.
Karen Howard from Organics and Natural agrees with Suzanne, by the way, which was the start of that question. Sandy Almaderas has a question for Elan. Elan, do you hug both?
I hug trees, I hug men, I hug women, I hug all things. I think hugs are a very primal human thing, and unfortunately they've become tainted with potential bad, but it's nice to connect with people and embrace, cheek to cheek, but Yeah. So yes, to the question, yes, absolutely, hug men. Just ask Gabe. We hug all the time.
And Sandy also says she loves your hugs, and I'm a
Yes,
hugger. So next time we meet, Elan,
sounds good.
we'll hug. Is that all right?
I look
I'm
forward to
asking in
it.
advance. I'm
There you go.
asking
Yes.
in
More
advance.
men to men hugs. I love that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Gabriel, I'll hug you all.
Great.
If
Awesome. I love
if it's
hugging.
if you'll allow me to. Um,
Yes, I will.
Kantha said something during the conversation that I had never heard of, and I wrote it down: the queen bee syndrome. And
Mm.
I think Salma, I'm going to start with you on this one. What is the queen bee syndrome?
So, in a nutshell, from my understanding and my experiences with queen bee syndrome, is that it's essentially somebody that thinks they can get away with things because they have, and so it just continues, and it's a terrible cycle. I've actually had a boss years back, a female boss, who, despite physical proof that I'm doing a great job, and I was a scientist in the lab, and usually you rate things by what your percent RSD is and your number of tests that you're able to complete in a day and how quickly you can do it accurately. Um, Despite all that, I would get passed on for promotions. I would get passed on even as a trainer for newcomers. And she just did not want to see me succeed at all. But she did get those people promoted, and she did herself get promoted, etc. So that's one example of how of someone like that.
And
Salma, if
Elon
I
and
may,
Gabriel, have you heard of that before? The queen bee? I mean, I know queen bees, but
I
not
personally,
in the workplace.
I had never heard that term before. Yesterday, actually, when we rehearsed, and but I had heard of that behavior before, which always like left me kind of speechless. Like, why would women be so toxic towards other women? Right? It's like, wouldn't you think that women, because they've gone through so like this type of sexual harassment and not being supported and feeling alone, you would expect them to want to support other women. So I'm having a struggle really understanding what is the root cause of this queen bee syndrome. Is
I
it, and
Yeah,
one of them I think could be, maybe they just want to be harsh on our women to prepare them for the reality of, yes, you are at basically a risk all the time, so just
Exactly.
work harder.
yeah.
Exactly.
Carrie Marshall joined us and said being passed on for promotions is very queen bee, and I would assume that would be, there are two people up for a promotion, a man and a woman, right? And maybe the woman is more qualified, but the woman gets the promotion because often that supervisor may be afraid of that woman coming after her job. Any response to that? No, we'll move on. Elan, have you heard the queen bee before?
I have, and actually, I had a person running our laboratory who was scientifically um, brilliant, but socially not so much. And at some point in time, it was when we had 24 people, 12 of them were going to quit because of this lab director person whose statute of limitations have exhausted. So I talk more freely now. And she, as I learned, I had to fire her, and HR said, you don't. And I said, well, I'm going to lose 12 people out of 24. That's a lot. And so it was basically a mutiny, and I ended up firing this person. And after some reflection and research, I did come across, this is many years ago, did across the phrase queen bee. And she exhibited all of the characteristics, and was not collaborative, and was sort of suppressing all women around, as well as
Yeah.
anyone else that came for her territory. It was shocking. Um, and she's still in the industry. And, at this point we do hug when we see each other at trade shows, because that's how most of my former employees end up, as huggers. But I don't know if, and here's my thought. I don't know if she even realizes she's a queen bee. That's the sad part. So
Yeah.
There's, I'm sorry, somebody. One of the things that I was thinking about is that there can be really overt sexism. Hey, honey, if you come with me this weekend, type of thing, okay, and you'll get promoted. Um, uh, I was thinking, this happened to me yesterday. And a couple of months ago, a friend of mine told me not to say, yes, ma'am. Okay. And it bothers her. It just, I don't know where I picked it up. I must have been saying it for years. And this is, and it's, I didn't realize it was, it's just not something nice to say to a woman unless you're in the South. Apparently, there's a in the South, women may expect it. Um, what about those little overt things
It's
that I didn't even realize I was doing? Elan, how about
Mark.
you? Do you?
I heard you talk about that in the previous panel. I looked it up.
Yeah,
That like, can we not say "ma'am" anymore? And as I understand it from the internet, whatever val that is, it was basically based like on age discrimination. So, and then some people don't identify as a woman. You might call them Miss or Ma'am. So it's confusing. And the terrain is changing very rapidly. There are phrases that I didn't hear about a week ago, or terms, or new definitions, and you got to stay up on it. I don't fully agree with quickly, rapidly accepting all of things. I think it's good to sit back and observe for a little bit before you quickly adopt the fact that you can't say "ma'am," because, like you said, in the South, you'd be, the other side, you'd be offensive if you didn't say "ma'am," right? So, it's important to know your crowd. But I'll end with it. It's very confusing and challenging for leaders to keep up with that and to know what's important, and what's not, and what's no longer allowed to say, which was fine a week ago.
it's confusing not only for leaders, for anybody.
Yeah.
I think. Uh, Gabriel, how about you?
I'm very glad you brought up the topic of words that can offend some and just be completely normal with others. And I'm personally, even being LGBTQIA plus person, I'm having a hard time following all the new pronouns that are coming up. Um, it was hard enough to learn the English language. Now I have to relearn it because now we're adding all these different pronouns to make sure that everybody feel like seen and accepted. And it can be very hard for not only leaders that are already aware, but like imagine trying to teach the same things to like leaders that are not. It can lead to like frustration and being completely lost in what is acceptable and what is not. And I'm afraid that unfortunately kind of like the pendulum is swinging the other side, and at some point we're like just not going to be able to communicate with each other because we're going to be too afraid of even
Yes.
like saying anything.
Thank you for saying that, Gabe. 100%.
Yeah.
It's paralysis by analysis sometimes.
And Salma, do you have any personal pet peeves that men may say to you? They're not overt. They're subtle.
Well, I mean, I brought up the beauty and brains thing. That's kind of a pet peeve of mine in the panel discussion as a question. Um, that's one of my pet peeves, pretty much. I've been told things like, you know, you have time to get your hair done and your nails done. You can have time to do this and things like that.
That's awful. That's I can't imagine. I can't imagine saying that to a coworker. I can imagine saying it to my wife,
Oh,
but not not to a coworker. You know, and I don't even know if it's fair if I say it to my wife. You
Yeah, I
stop,
was about to say, it's like,
honey.
are you sure you want to say that to your wife?
Get locked out of anyway. Um, uh, Leah Weiss says something. It's sad that women feel threatened by other women and then sabotage each other, but it's likely due to how few women are in leadership positions. So let's take that and let's talk about making challenges or making a challenge to the industry to make change. Uh, I'll start with Gabriel. What should the industry do to alleviate the elephant? Let's get the elephant out of the room. He's too big anyway.
Because, well, I think there's like three main things that we can do. The lack of representation and diversity in leadership position, kind of like the main one, right? Like if you don't see other people representing you at a higher levels in organization, well, first it's hard to like even imagine yourself in those positions because you always see the same type of stereotype. So that's one that companies should really focus on and promoting from within people that start with them and bring them up to that level of the organization, and then eradicate workplace harassment and discrimination. I mean, these are the two main points.
Salma?
Yeah, Mark, I think that one of the things I wanted to mention earlier too is that as people like myself and Sandra and Karen and all of us, progress and become in leadership positions, we now have the ability to change the culture or to implement a good culture, to just slowly prevent, the elephant from squeezing back in through the window or whatever, back into the room. So I think that would be a good start.
Elan, you're up.
So I've been quoted saying that one of the solutions to this industry's quality issues as a testing lab is that we just all test more, and obviously that would look good for me and Sandra and other labs. But the fact is, if we did test more as an industry, there would be less quality issues, more efficacious products, more repeat sales, less tarnished relationships with the media, and so on and so forth. And similarly with this issue, I think if we continue to talk about it and let it be known. And so what Carrie said was beautiful about her, having a safe place for her daughter and her friends. I mean, that was amazing. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son, and those days are coming, and I hope to make my home a safe place for their friends and them. So in this industry, if we continue to make this a topic and just talk about it, make it more of a conversation. So, the people who are making these bad choices will sort of realize that they can't anymore because they're going to get exposed. And they'll get, pushed out of the industry. And that, I know that that's a long game kind of approach and perhaps not fast enough for someone or for some people here that have had terrible experiences. But
yeah, but don't we need Elan to use a golf term? The short game is where everything's made, right? Don't we need a short game plan?
Well, maybe this is the short game plan. We're on it right now, right? We're having this conversation. By the way, I don't play ball sports, so that one way over my head. But I do say I'm a long game guy. So Sandra said in the panel earlier that we plant these seeds, and you have to nurture the soil and water it, and continue, and eventually be a beautiful forest of perhaps equality and just safety. So my solution is just continue to have these conversations, but also take for what you said, the short game. Yeah, we need to eradicate these bad players. These things happen. Speak up. We need people to take risks, to stand up and risk their careers, so that the future women who are shy and don't feel comfortable speaking up don't make those same choices to perhaps. And I hope it doesn't come across negative, but perhaps perpetuate the bad behavior. Right? We need people to be strong. These women on these panels have been amazing to tell their stories and enlighten those of us who have been ignorant to these situations. We need to continue talking about it, maybe even get louder.
One of the things that I think we should take a look at as we wrap up, there is no. I wish there was an instant solution to this.
Right.
Let's take a look at that. What do you think the industry at large could do? I mean, these kinds of programs I think are important. I'm thinking of something that Jim LaBelle was asked. And Jim was asked, what about a woman who's 50? She may be harassed a little bit at her job. She can't go out and get another job. We talked about that a little while ago, but this is something that's, somebody who's maybe older, in their 50s, 60s, or beyond, right? But they're still willing to work. They have the brain capacity, physically, and they love to work. Any solutions for that?
I mean, I don't think I'm the one to speak on this, but not being in that demographic, but unfortunately, there's crickets now, so there's not a lot of solutions. That generation has to continue to fight the fights they've been fighting. Hopefully, the generation behind them, picking up right behind what they've done, will change things. And what Suzanne Shelton just wrote, helps when men speak up and object to other men inappropriate denigrating women. Exactly. I mean, there are characters in our industry, well known, that are very guilty of this topic. I personally am unfortunately around some of them sometimes, and I know that I've made actions to not laugh at their stupid jokes, or even like pretend to take a phone call and walk away when things get ugly. Perhaps I can say, hey, that's really inappropriate to say that. And that's the next step for men like myself, to speak up against them at the time of, and take my own risks in that. But for those 50-year-old women who are experiencing those challenges, I kind of feel like it might be a little bit hopeless at this very moment. Like you said, they can't speak up. They're not easily employed these days, and it's a tough situation. So it really takes the next generation to start making that change for everyone else.
Gabriel, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I've been listening attentively. It's like, what can we do? Like concrete things we could do. And with the example of quality from Elan, I was like, well, I mean, what if there was a quality indicator for companies, like a DIB score, where when this type of harassment, this type of discrimination, this type of not okay behavior in a companies, like those can be captured, and as we have a certified organic, we would have a DIB company with a score of a 10 out of 10, and where this company is a safe place that everybody can be who they want to be, and who they are, without fearing their job and their career and their like day-to-day lives. So yeah, creating this type of scoring, I don't know how we would create that score. That's for the next topic. But and then like from putting out there which are the bad actor and which are the good actors, then naturally people will move away from the bad actors, because they don't want to do business with bad actor. Who wants? Well, that's an idea.
And Selma, how about you?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I mean, I agree with the guys. I think it's a long game. And like I said earlier, people like us having these conversations now can implement things in the cultures where we are, and start with that. Have more conversations, have more organizations where women are together talking about these things, enabling each other, giving each other the tools, the ideas. Um, but it will take some time.
It will. Well, we're going to wrap up now. I thank you all, Elan, Gabriel, and Salma, and all the people who made comments. Leah Weiss, Amy Summers, let's see, Suzanne, Petra. I'm looking, Karen Howard, Sandra Lee. Trying to find Petra again. Carrie Marshall, thank you. And you really opened up and shared, Carrie. Thank you so much for that. I don't want to leave anybody out. Suzanne Shelton. And anyway, thank you. We've had a lot of comments, and we appreciate that. We're going to be back for After the Elephant next week, next Thursday, special edition of Late Night Health. And our response and discussion panel will be critical communication strategies in the face of sexism. And it'll be the panel will be food, beverage, and the beauty sectors of the natural products industry. That's next Thursday at 1 o'clock on Eastern. And you can make sure you're registered for Elephant in the Room session, so you can listen to what we're responding to during After the Elephant. Go to invincivox.vfairs.com. That's INICIVOX.vfairs.com to register if you're not registered yet. And if you missed any of the previous sessions, you can watch them through the end of the series. And of course, we'll be back here on social media for our post response on After the Elephant. I'm Mark Alyn. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.